Hey everyone, this is Robert Gardner with the Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. I'm really excited to have on the show tonight Jason Erickson. Jason Erickson is the admin of the Massage Therapist group on Facebook. I think there are about 45,000 members at this point. Jason is heavily involved in the pain science community and in trying to uplift massage therapists and pain science education in our industry. I was really excited to be able to talk with him. And Jason, can you give people a little more information about yourself and how they can reach you?
Sure. My website is healtharts.com. That's health arts with an ES. My contact information is on there, and I've also got a contact page. And I teach CE classes around the country as Jason needs seminars. And, folks are also welcome to contact me via Facebook. And I'm easy to find there because I probably spend too much time on it.
Cool. So, Jason, were there certain topics? I know we had before the podcast just a brief conversation about some things we might potentially discuss, but is anything in particular jumping out at you that you wanted to talk about tonight?
I'm pretty much wide open. I mean, there's so many good topics that have been discussed lately. The state of change in massage therapy education. Just overall there seems to be a sea change in attitudes and interests in a lot of massage therapists, and so I'm kind of interested to go with in a variety of directions. So why don't you lead off and we'll see where it goes.
Well, let me say some things and then we can kind of riff off of each other. I think that the industry as a whole, I've been working now, I think, for the last 17 years. So I had a chance to see maybe pre-massage envy and then the overall massage industry, and I mean that in a large U.S. scale, start to shift towards larger corporations and companies, Massage Heights, Massage Envy, those sorts of things. Elements comes to mind. I think that individual massage therapists, when I talk to them, I'm getting a little bit of therapists who are maybe my age or older that are specializing. They're going into like niche areas that aren't just what I think people would classically think of as just massage. They're going into sort of specializations related to pain management or specific kinds of work like manual lymph drainage. So now that there's this blanketed mass market for massage, there are therapists who are specializing. Is that what you notice as well?
Oh, huge. When I first got into massage, I already had an interest in helping people with pain and injuries and stuff, and particularly working with athletes as well, because I used to be a competitive athlete, and I first started really taking massage seriously as part of my rehab program to recover from a bunch of injuries and other issues that had reduced me to disability due to the amount of pain that I had. And so even when I first went to massage school, I already had an idea of, I wanted to be able to help everybody, but I especially wanted to be able to focus on like being really good for certain types of folks. And so even though I like to think that I'm reasonably competent to work with just about anybody, I know people that specialize in working with combat veterans. That I already know enough to know that I'm not ready to work with that particular population yet, because there's things that I need to learn before I should even dip my toes in that water. Yeah. And same thing with manual lymph drainage. I know just enough about it to know that I don't know enough about it to say that that's what I do. That doesn't mean that I can't provide some help to people that have lymph issues. Or that might benefit from that kind of work. But, I refer a lot to other therapists or to other healthcare professionals or to other fitness professionals because I'm not equally good at everything. And that was a hard thing for me to be comfortable with, because I really wanted to go, I know all this stuff. But, the truism is that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so, now I learned, I know much more now than I did when I first got out of school. But the truth is that, I've also gotten to be much better at recognizing the gaps in my knowledge and understanding that what I learned when I came out of school was enough to get me started, but it certainly wasn't enough to adequately, address all of the different things I've seen along the way.
Yeah. The quest for ongoing continuing education. You're a continuing education provider like I am, and I think you and I are likely to be the people who first and foremost will sit and say, I don't know. There's so many areas. So like if people talk about manual lymph drainage, I don't know a lot about it. I don't have a lot of specific expertise in dealing with PTSD or like combat veterans and some of the things they may deal with. So I'm a little bit, I think, along your lines. I think really seasoned professionals, we understand the limitations in our knowledge and just how much we don't know.
Well, hopefully, I've met some folks that are like, oh, I've been practicing for 27 years. And I'm like, and I'm like, oh, okay. So how do you know this or that? And they're like, well, if you just, when you've been practicing long enough, you just know. And I'm like, well, okay. First time I encountered that was I was at a seminar and I had been practicing for about 5 years, and this guy that had been practicing this one particular modality for 24 years made a kind of a pronouncement about what was going on with the person that was on the table. And I'm like, when I asked him, how did he know? And he said, well, you'll just know when you've been practicing long enough. I'm like, okay, you've been practicing for this for 24 years. I've been practicing for 5 years. Can you help me save like 19 years? Can you, if you can just kind of bust it down to something that maybe it'll only take me like a few months or a year to be able to figure this out, that would be great. And he was unable to do that. And that was a little frustrating for me because I realized that, as much as he knows that that particular individual was not able to break it down in a way where he could really pass it on to somebody else. And so that's something that, as a continuing education provider, I don't want people that take my classes to go, oh my God, it's like, I have no idea how to use, it's like, I guess I'm going to have to wait another 8 years or what. No, I want people to be able to use what they learn now. And I don't, I want it to be immediate application, and maybe they are not as comfortable with it yet. Maybe they need to play with it for a little while. Cool. That's how we learn anyway. But I don't want people to walk out of my classes going, well, I have no idea how to put any of that into use. Yeah. That's a big fail on my part if that ever happens.
I think because I'm a practitioner and an educator like you, these are two very different skills. And one of the things I've been grappling with in the past few years is how to deliver information in a way that someone can incrementally pick it up step by step. And I'm still honing that process. Usually, I think I can explain enough to get someone started and then say, this is what I think is going on, but here are the questions I have that still remain unanswered to myself. I feel like that's a more honest way of giving students information, but also letting them know where my information base stops.
I think that's really, I think it's really critical that also applies to, when we're educating our clients too, because it's like, it's like, it's one thing to be in a classroom and have a student ask a question and be like, oh, I don't know, that's a good question, right? Okay, but when a client asks us a question, it's like, I think there's a certain pressure that some of us have, maybe it was how we were trained to think, or maybe just because of ego. I definitely, like when I first came out of massage school, and I've told this story many times, people would ask me like, well, why do I have this pain? I'd be like, well, you have a trigger point, or you have an adhesion, or you have a this, or you have a, but it was very, it's very confident pronouncements. And the thing is that, when it turned out to not be true, I had just shot my credibility in the foot, But the other thing is that when it came right down to it, I didn't actually know. And every time I really dug my teeth into some new material that I was learning about, for a while I was not self-aware enough to realize that I was kind of doing that thing where you learn something new and exciting, and all of a sudden it colors your whole world, and you've got to, and now that's the whole thing, right? And so, now I've realized that, it's like, just because I'm learning something new and exciting doesn't necessarily mean that applies to everybody.
Yeah.
And, and so some years ago, clients started asking me, like, the usual question, like, why do I hurt? And I started going, I don't know. Good question. And what was really surprising to me is that, like right away, as soon as I started saying that, the more comfortable I got with saying, I don't know, the more my clients would look at me and say, wow, you really know your shit.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so even though I still often tell people I don't know exactly why or exactly what's going on, people, feel, it seems to reassure people that I am, at the very least, that I'm honest enough to admit that there are limits to what I know. Yeah. And maybe what they're really recognizing is that I'm not going to BS them when I'm not really confident.
Yeah. Honesty, I've never had a client question my integrity or my knowledge base because I got to a point where I said, I don't know. I've never had to think I don't know what I'm doing because I couldn't rail off, what their issue was specifically. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could? But I think one of the things that I fell prey to was that, when I was looking for a school to attend, there were a number of good schools available to me, and I came in and I eventually chose one, and the school has still got a great reputation and so forth. But there was definitely something with just knowing that, like, I'm attending a good school. I'm going to a school that's got a good reputation, and having instructors that were confident and so forth. What I don't remember ever having is, I don't remember the instructors ever saying, "Okay, remember, you're only learning just enough to be competent. You're only learning just enough to get started." And that, it's like, I know that all of my instructors were taking additional classes. And if they said it, I don't remember it. But I do remember a moment that really stuck with me. And it was a class in which we were starting to learn some therapeutic methods. And our teacher was demonstrating something. And the rest of us, half of us were on the table and half of us were practicing. And so we were following along, and one of my classmates is like, "Wow, so this is how you do it in your practice." And without missing a beat, my instructor said, "No, I never do it this way." And most of my classmates were like all scandalized. They're like, "What? If you never do it this way, why are you teaching us this? Why don't you teach us the way you do it?" And she said, "I've been doing this for over 16 years. She said, "I'm teaching you what you are ready to learn."
Yeah. And
that really stuck with me. And over the years, I've realized that statement has really held up well over time. It's kind of like, a white belt walking into a martial arts dojo, and on the very first night, asking their demanding that their instructor teach them the jumping spin kicks that the black belts are doing instead of the basic front kick that the instructor wants them to learn first. And so, in my CE classes, it's like I try to be conscious of that, because I've been in a lot of classes where it's kind of like, hey, we're going to teach you this super advanced, kung fu, whatever. And, where the idea is that the massage methods or techniques or concepts being presented is like, okay, anything else you must throw out. It is. I don't like that, because if somebody's walked into my room and they've been helping people for the last 8 years or 10 years or 20 years, using what they do know, that means that what they already know has value. And it might be helpful and for reasons other than what they were originally taught. But that doesn't mean it's not helpful. And so I don't want them to feel like they have to now abandon everything that they've been doing and just try to be like me. A, that would be boring, and B, like, really, like, I mean, they know things I want to learn, so why should they try to be just like me when they've already got good stuff that they know? So I really want to see people come in with, open to learning things, but at the same time, it's like I try to think in terms of, like, how can I present things in a way where people can find the points of integration for themselves, where they can connect what they already know to what they're learning without me having to connect the dots for them. And I think I think most people are able to do that. It's just, I have to kind of get out of the way a little bit.
Usually, yeah, we'll be back right after a commercial break.
Hello, y'all. This is Trent Knox, podcast producer for Robert Gardner Wellness Podcasts. On a quick short break here, we want to talk about the new holiday sale that we've been running, 20% off of all digital workbooks and videos. We have that on our rgwellness.store. If you just head over there, go to holiday sale, take advantage of 20% off of our workbooks and videos. Back to Robert in the studio.
So as I was saying, the work that I teach primarily is mat-based. And as I'm working with therapists, it's a little bit like you were talking about martial arts, Jason, and it's almost like teaching boxing. And I have an industry of boxers, and now we're going to teach them Muay Thai. Now they can kick. They can use their feet to deliver pressure for the first time. So whenever I'm working with students, they sometimes feel like it's either or. And I'm like, no. Listen, I have preferences for a lot of different reasons, just like anybody would. I really just want to take where you are and supplement this. I want to give you more tools, and I want you to look at the practice differently to be able to see, like, what can you incorporate where you are. I've got students who study with me interactively online, and they're asking for more mat stuff. And then they wonder why I keep creating more table stuff. And I'm like, well, me getting rid of the table just eschews 90% of the massage population to begin with. If I've got therapists who work at Massage Envy and they're boxers and they work on a table, I have to be able to show them how to use their hands and arms and forearms and elbows so that they're not straining and stressing while they're building skills and practice to be able to expand.
Just yesterday, I got a 2-hour Thai massage, and I've studied just a little bit of Thai massage on the table and a little bit of Thai foot massage and so forth. Again, just enough to know that I don't know it, but I love receiving it. And sometimes I wonder, why haven't I done this yet? I used to teach yoga, and I used to teach grappling. I'm completely comfortable on a mat. It's like I would be like a fish in water. But the thing is that, even though I haven't studied Thai massage, it was really interesting is that my therapist and I, here and there, we were talking about some different things, and she was letting me know, like, okay, so now I'm going to do this and so forth. And afterwards, we were talking a little bit more, and I realized that there's some things that I could teach her that would make some of the things she did work better for her body mechanics. And so there's no reason why, it's like I don't have to go be an expert in Thai massage in order to help a Thai massage therapist understand how some of the mechanisms that are basically universal connect to what she already does. And so one example, was that, addressing some anterior hip stuff that was a little bit tender, and so there were some things that she did, and, but I could tell that she was working maybe a little bit harder than she needed to. And she mentioned this herself later on. And I was like, whenever you want to, I can show you a virtually effortless way to address that same area without, in a way that'll blend very nicely into what you're already doing. And she was very excited about that idea. So it's not like she has to not do Thai massage. It's just like, maybe we can just like find little tweaks, little connection points. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for, education to move in that kind of direction, because, I think, like right now, I'm putting together a 100-hour class for a massage school, and in those 100 hours, I need to do the best I can to present anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, pathology, and some neurology and pain science. And, in 100 hours is, you could easily do hundreds or thousands of hours on any one of those topics. But this is a very entry-level class. So I've got to make sure that I'm not trying to like take too deep of a dive for people that are just getting started in their massage training. But at the same time, it's like, I've also seen those kind of presented, like here's anatomy and here's physiology and here's kinesiology and here's the, where they're separate, where we're presented very separately. And what I'm looking at as I'm developing this class is how can I find the connection points so that people can see how the anatomy and the physiology and the pathology are all interlinked, and what are some of the implications for, pain science wise, what are some of the implications for how we might talk to that person? Like does that just change the way we'd communicate with them based on what we're seeing or what they're reporting to us? And so, I'm trying to kind of set, a framework for them to be able to think in ways that will enable them to integrate what they learn from now on once they've taken that class. So I'm hoping that I'm successful in achieving the goals that I have for this class. Don't know, so I just for my first class, I'm gonna say, sorry, you have to be the guinea pigs for this, but anyway, it's, I've talked to educators across the country, and some of whom I know that that have been teaching for many, many years, and some are following a very a more traditional structure in terms of like kind of separating things and then later on showing how things connect. But then I've talked to some that are kind of showing how things are linked all the way, and then layering the understanding of those different things without disturbing those links. So I'm excited to see how things are changing, because we also have now the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education. They've got a massage therapy educator certification program, in which to get that, there's quite a bit of preparation you need to do, and you need to also be able to really understand what are the core competencies of being a good educator. And you need to be able to show that you don't understand how to apply those core competencies when developing your classes and your programs. And I was looking at some of the materials for that I would need to put together to apply it. And I realized that I'm probably going to move forward with that after I develop this 100-hour class, because it's going to be a chunk of work. But the thing is that if I want to be a good educator, it's not enough to just know the material. I think you need to put in work on how to be better as an educator.
Yes, I think they're very distinct disciplines, and you also, as a practitioner, understand what you're trying to do more when you start teaching it to people, and they're asking even whether you consider basic questions, and you go, oh, I never thought about, like, they'll ask a question in class and I go, how do I do that? Because I don't think about it anymore in the same way. Some of it just operates off of pattern recognition and muscle memory.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of that, it's like you probably get questions where you're like, you like, how do you do that? And then before you can answer that question, because that you've got an answer, but sometimes you have to like actually grab somebody and start doing it, and then you can explain it as you're doing it rather than just rattling it off the top of your head. And I think that's always an interesting thing when I see an educator that needs to start doing it before they can break it down and explain it verbally, and because that's when you know that it's like you're really getting their, in a way, not only are you getting kind of a raw take on it, but it's like you also are taking them into a realm that they really haven't worked out systematically yet.
Yeah.
They'll do it systematically, but they haven't gotten in the habit of explaining it systematically yet.
You're right. I continue to refine how information is delivered, and then I'm really fiercely critical. I don't think students realize how much time I spend. I notice after classes, I tend to drop in my mood. I get almost a little depressed the day after classes end because I spend time, unfortunately, and I'm working on this, sort of questioning how I deliver things and could I have delivered it better. Now, perfectionist streak can be nice to be able to go in and improve things, but it's unreasonable to think of it as like it's perfect. I think of body work and then the education process is this ongoing art, like being a painter. It's not about being perfect. It's about continuing to refine the process to help not only your practice evolve, but as an educator to allow these students to pick up tools, techniques, and theory so that they can apply it where they are as needed.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned earlier, it's like in terms of, a boxer and a Muay Thai fighter, it's like, both of them use their fists, but the Muay Thai fighter, they'll use their fists differently. Even if they're fighting under the same rules, their footwork is going to be totally different and so forth. But let's say you take both of them and say, okay, now we're going to put both of you in the same jiu-jitsu class next to each other. And now they can't throw punches at all. They just have to wrestle. And both of them are going to be in the same new world. Both of them are going to be at a major disadvantage compared to somebody that's been floating around on the mat for a few years, because it's going to be a totally different world for both of them. And so, as educators, one of the things that I think is really interesting is the transition from teaching continuing education, and now, for me, I'm just preparing to start teaching in a school environment where I'm teaching over the course of an entire term. And I know a number of educators that have gone the other direction. They've been teaching in a school for a while, and they're like, well, I'm going to start teaching continuing education classes. But it's two different. It's like, again, it's like boxing and Muay Thai. It's different skill sets. I mean, teaching a group of people that are already working professionals in a concentrated format over 1 to 4 days, and they're all highly motivated and have paid to be there, is very different from people that are just getting started, that are going to be working with you for several months, and who may or may not want to actually be in this class. And so, when when we're going through this process of teaching, I'm confident in my ability to deliver a good continuing education class. I've gotten enough kudos, from the people that have attended my classes that I feel like, okay, I don't know if I don't know where I rank compared to anybody else, but I feel comfortable that people are going to enjoy the class. But when, I don't know where I'm going to be, in terms of delivering this classroom experience. And when people are, I think it's just as important to pay attention to the same fundamentals. Are we keeping their interest? Are we connecting things in a way that they can comprehend? And is it meaningful to them where they actually are, where we can motivate them to want to be there?
Quick commercial break.
Hey y'all, this is Trent Knox again. I just wanted to come in here. I see a lot of you guys are coming in on Facebook, and I see some folks out on Twitch saying things and saying hello and commenting, and I just want to address you guys and say hello back to you guys, and let the guests and Robert say hello as well. They say hello. And then so we had somebody call in, and I think the system is going to be changing over time. I just want to kind of let you guys know that if you're going to be calling in, the show is an hour long. In the last 15 minutes, we'll take the phone call, and we'll kind of take Q&A as we go. And last but not least, for you guys who are listening to this podcast, audio on demand, we are also currently doing a free trial on the Reboot Insiders Club. That's your first 30 days free for the Reboot Insider Club. And also, thank you for the follow on Mixer from Shelby26. Back to Robert in the studio.
And I believe I'm here again with Jason Erickson. Jason Erickson, can you give them information again about where they can find you, both on your website and maybe on your social media?
Sure. I'm easily found on Facebook. Look for Jason Erickson. I actually also have a page for Health Arts, HEALTHARTES, Continue Education for Transformation. Website is healtharts.com, and there's a contact page on there, and certainly people are able to send me messages through Facebook as well. And so other than that, if people want to come see me for a session at some point too, I'm available at Egan Massage Center in Egan, Minnesota. And our website is eganmassage.com. You can certainly book appointments with me online there. And whether it's a massage session or if you just want to come in and do more of an education or consulting session, I'm available that way as well.
Nice. Yeah, what I was saying before we went to break was when I deal with students in class, I've not had the privilege of teaching in core curriculum. I only teach continuing education. So the way that I'm putting together curriculum is slightly different. And one of the things that I've noticed is I'll occasionally find students who are fairly fresh out of school, but they're already starting to have problems, I'm assuming related to their body mechanics. They're having problems with their hands and arms. And I always ask them, did they not work on this in school? Because one of the first things I would do, even in continuing education, and I understand that students need a template. I understand that they need a sequence. Sometimes to be able to say, when you're in massage school, you learn a Swedish routine that's going to give you a basic routine to fall back on, until you're developing and honing your chops for improvisation. But what I really respond well to is questions from students so that I can judge where the student is at and tailor that information to them. And or the student says, well, my hands and wrists are hurting. And I say, okay, so now we have clients, their hands and wrists are hurting. Class, come around, let me show you how I'm going to address this. And they get to see, how do I communicate with the person? How do I find out where their pain is located? What's my mental process that's going on about thinking about, okay, is it their forearm flexors and extensors? For instance, and I'll see this regularly. Clients will come in and say, I have carpal tunnel syndrome. And I'll say, okay, were you diagnosed by a doctor with carpal tunnel syndrome? And they'll say, no, but I have hand pain. And I go, oh, okay. It's possible that you might have some tight muscles that are referring pain, into your hand and wrist. But what I just did is I took carpal tunnel syndrome, this I got to have surgery diagnosis, and said, oh, you have muscle tension?
Sure.
Because I've had pain, chronic pain. You talked about being in chronic pain, and it's how much of your chronic pain was related to muscle tension? Because a lot of mine is.
Mm-hmm. Well, you brought up a great example. I mean, carpal tunnel syndrome, this is one of those things, people will come in and they'll say, oh, I have carpal tunnel. And, and I don't know how much it varies around the country, but in my area, I mean, there's a lot of excellent medical facilities and so forth. But obviously, as massage therapists, I'm not allowed to diagnose, and I have to be very cautious about contradicting diagnoses. I mean, if I suspect that a diagnosis is just outright wrong, I'm going to refer that person to go see a different medical provider that is qualified to evaluate and possibly contradict that diagnosis. I don't want to put myself in that situation. But, if a person comes in and says, oh, I have carpal tunnel, I'm like, okay, and Now, if they have hands and wrists, then yeah, they do. They have carpal tunnels, but that's an anatomical structure. But the thing is that I'm going to want to know, like, okay, so how did you find that you have carpal tunnel syndrome? And like, oh, I was diagnosed or I self-diagnosed. Well, if they self-diagnose, then it's like, okay, there's a number of different reasons why you might have that, and some of the reasons that you might read about on the internet can be pretty scary. But let's check it out. Or, oh, your aunt had it, and her symptoms were the same. Okay, well, the cool thing is that it might be you might have pain in that same area for a different reason, but let's check it out. On the other hand, I've had some people say, oh, I was diagnosed by my physician, or I was diagnosed by my chiropractor, or something like that. And it's like, okay, and one of the questions I'll ask is like, so how did they assess you? And a lot of times they say, well, they just, I described my symptoms and where they were, and they just said, oh, you have carpal tunnel. And that was the end of it. I'm like, okay. So right then and there, it's like, that tells me that, okay, that person, basically that person has pain in somewhere in their wrist or hand. It's like, I'm not going to say, oh, well, they did a lousy job or anything like that, but I might ask them, like, did they do this kind of test or this kind of test or and if they say no, then okay. Well, I'll tell you what, the good thing is that there's kind of a textbook version of carpal tunnel, and that's the scariest one. That's the one that, that traditionally might require surgery, but there are a number of other versions. There are a number of other combinations of factors that result in the same kinds of symptoms, but which don't require surgery to treat. And so let me do some assessment and see if we can figure out, if this is something that I can do, or if you would actually need to be referred to somebody else. And so now I haven't had to say, oh, that diagnosis was incorrect. I've just kind of opened up the door a little bit for them to consider the possibility that it might be fall under this diagnosis as a term, but that term, instead of being a pinpoint, it's more of an umbrella, and that there's a number of different things that fall underneath that term. It's like saying runner's knee. It's like, I have runner's knee. Okay. When was the last time you went running? Oh, never. Okay. Well, it means you've got pain in your knees. So let's talk about why that might be. And, I think that I think that what you were saying earlier in terms of getting people to, look at their body mechanics, for example, some people tend to confuse the term body mechanics with biomechanics, which are two totally different things. And body mechanics, I mean, that's how you, the therapist, use your body, as you're moving around. And I think it would be really fascinating, actually, to what I've never seen, and I think it would be fascinating to do it. Would be to see a class that looks at at body mechanics for both on a table, but also with the client on a mat, and look at how there might be some things that are different, but really looking at how the concepts and how the principles of good body mechanics are the same, no matter whether the client is on a table or a mat, because ultimately, it's like we still want, if we need to stack our joints, if we need to position ourselves in certain ways, if we want to rely on body weight as opposed to muscle effort, if we want to do things in ways that are going to protect our bodies from injury, then the basic principles of that are pretty universal. And so, now it's just a matter of like, how do we express those principles in practice on a mat versus expressing those principles up on a table? That's kind of the way I look at it. And boy, now you kind of got me wanting to put together another class.
Well, I mean, there's so much avenue, and I think you and I both have a passion for massage and body work in addition to education. I'm really not opposing the table. What I tell students sometimes is like, listen, if I'm particular about the mat, it's because I think that biomechanically, this is advantageous in many ways. We just give you more tools. I'll say something like that. But the mat work that I teach, there is no major facility in the United States that my students could work at. They don't allow mat-based work. They have to either work independently or work in a small facility that would actually be open to mat-based work. And this is fairly new in the Western marketplace, because the table is, ever present.
Yeah, that's something that I think that is part of it's going to depend just on representation. Down in St. Louis, Missouri, for example, I was just there a couple of weeks ago to teach a couple of classes. And while I was there, I also connected with a number of colleagues, and some of us went over to the AMTA National Convention together. And one of those colleagues is Sarah Dewberry. And she is known primarily for what she calls barefoot massage. So whether it's Ashiatsu or some other brand name of massage that's done primarily with the feet, it's pretty much almost all of the stuff that she does, and which is done at the business that she owns, is done with the client on a mat. On the floor, and she has 5 or 6 therapists, and that's all they do, and they are booked solid for weeks in advance. And unfortunately, they're just about fortunately for her, there's pretty much the only place in all of St. Louis right now where you can reliably go and get barefoot massage. But I think part of that is just there just aren't that many people learning it yet. But I am starting to see more modalities that rely on mat-based massage methods that are starting to pop up. Some of them are like newly trademarked methods, which that look like they're probably just modifications of older existing methods. But whatever, I think it's more a matter of just of a lot of individual practitioners and small businesses promoting it. The practice that I co-own, we have about 20 therapists, including myself. And when my partner and I first took over the business, it was a part of a very small local chain that uses a completely different business model from the other big chains that we're familiar with. But we're completely independent now, and we have just 2 therapists right now that do mat-based massage sessions, whether it's Thai massage or otherwise. And for us, it did mean that accommodating that meant that we couldn't have the hydraulic lift tables in all of our treatment rooms, for example, because you really can't just tuck those into a corner very well. Whereas, so we have made special accommodations, but we want that to be available to our clients because it's great. I thoroughly enjoy it myself, but as more people try it, I think that demand will continue to increase. And I do know some therapists here in the Twin Cities that make their living doing almost exclusively mat-based massage, whether it's Thai massage or some type of other type of barefoot massage. So I think the market is definitely there, but I think that part of it's going to be just increasing representation where it becomes increasingly visible. And then part of it just might be a little bit of that, ooh, it's my feet. I'm embarrassed. Some people tell me that they're embarrassed about their feet for some reason. And that's a whole nother set of issues that I don't even attempt to dig into.
Packaging, marketing, and specialization. The industry will continue to grow and develop. I'm really interested to see, I'm 42 now. What does the industry look like when I'm 62, 20 years from now?
That's a really good question. I think that in 20 years we're going to see a lot more integration of massage therapy into our healthcare systems, and I think we're going to start to see more acceptance and reimbursement by insurance. Right now, in Syracuse, New York, the VA program there has a program that's overseen by a therapist named Nicole Miller, and I got to know Nicole and attend a class with her at the AMTA National Convention, and so they've been developing ways of working with veterans and especially with combat veterans. And she's the person that put together the program that is recognized for specialty certification in massage for veterans, which is offered as a specialty certificate through the NCB-TMB. And one of the things that she was telling me about is how the VA up there decided, like, okay, we've been offering some other less conventional options for our veterans. Let's add massage to the list of options and see what kind of response we get. Because, you know, whatever types of therapy they offer and the veterans request, that's what they're going to try to provide. So already they've had approximately 3,000 veterans request massage as the primary form of therapy that they would like to receive. And they are going to be receiving an average of 20 massages each. So just in that little pilot program, they've already got 60,000 massage appointments being booked. And right now they only have a network of about 120 therapists to send them to. If all 120 therapists only saw those veterans full time, that's still 6 to 7 years of work. And so, you know, there's a huge push to bring programs like that nationwide to many other VA centers. And the VA is the largest hospital network in the country. And the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, they've got a massage therapy training program. There's other hospitals here in the Twin Cities, over in Washington State. Massage therapists have been recognized as healthcare providers for some time now. You know, I think that, you know, like not everybody has to become medical or medically oriented or hardcore science-minded types of folks. But, you know, I mean, I think that it's just going to be a normal thing for people to go like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go into massage therapy because I want to, you know, I want to work with people at the VA, or because I want, you know, I think it'd be great to work at the hospital, and I'm going to be a massage therapist down at the local senior center. You know, I just think that that's going to be, you know, standard. And I think that the compensation that therapists working in those environments receive is probably going to improve considerably too, because we're a hell of a lot cheaper than a lot of the other types of services that they can provide. So the thing is, though, is that if we're going to work in those environments, our education has got to step it up too. We've got to know our terminology. We can't be talking about chakras when nobody else on the entire medical staff is going to talk about.
How dare you, Jason Erickson?
That doesn't mean we can't be thinking about chakras, right? Yeah. But we've got, but the charting and so forth that we talk about, you know, the things that we talk about when we're work with other members of a professional medical team, we need to make sure that we're on the same page with them, using the same language. And if we're not, you know, then we're out the door. You know, and you know, I know of one medical center where there was one therapist. You know, they were still in the early stages of getting comfortable with having massage therapists in the facility at all, and they had a very limited access to which patients or individuals they could work with. And one of those therapists was writing about all kinds of things that were not even remotely normally charted. And there were senior members of the medical staff at that hospital that were absolutely infuriated, and they darn near lost the entire massage program. And, you know, it took some valiant effort to save the massage program. And, you know, and they realized they needed to, you know, bring those therapists up to snuff. So, and it wasn't long after that I started to notice massage, you know, hospital-based massage therapy training programs popping up, so that therapists interested in those positions would be better prepared right away. And there's a fellow named Brent Jackson that runs a massage therapy training program in South Carolina, and it's phenomenal. They share facilities with a nursing program, and they have, you know, I mean, from day one, you know, things like universal precautions, proper sanitation, you know, I mean, just the whole idea of how you should work within a hospital or hospital-oriented environment, that's drilled into them from day one. And those students graduate immediately knowing how to walk right into a hospital and do their job as part of a team, and being comfortable with that. They even work with the robotic patients that can simulate all kinds of unexpected medical situations right there in the middle of a session. And so they get comfortable with, with being able to recognize these things and knowing when they need to go summon help, or if it's just something that, or if it's something that they can just continue to work with, depending on the situation. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
The battle between what I see and what I would generally refer to as science and energy. And did you see the National Certification Board, like they sent out an email talking about energy-based courses and like what they're doing about whether or not they're approving, like say chakra-based courses for massage therapists?
Well, the main differentiator that they, yeah.
All right, we'll just take a quick commercial break.
Hey y'all, this is Trent Knox again, podcast producer for Robert Gardner Wellness Podcast. This is the last 15 minutes of the podcast live, the live portion of the podcast. So if you are watching, you are viewing the podcast live, and you would like to have your questions answered by Jason and Robert, it is your chance to call in. Call in at 512-539-0442, and we will have you screened to be on the show. And before, last but not least, again, holiday sale currently going on, 20% off of digital workbooks and videos. If you go to robertgardnerwellness.com, go to the store, you can go to the tab that says holiday sale, view the workbooks and videos there, or you can go to bit.ly/RGW holiday sale. Okay, guys, back to the studio.
So, Jason, I'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourself again, and then I'd like you to continue what you were saying just before we went to a commercial break. We were talking about the NCB TMB and like energy-based courses for massage therapists.
Sure, Jason Erickson, and I can be found online at healtharts.com, or you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, healtharts.com. Health Arts, Continuing Education for Transformation. Otherwise, you can just look me up by my name. I'm easy to find because I spend too much time on Facebook. And I'm certainly happy to take comments or questions anytime. As far as the NCB TMB and the announcement, some years ago, they started an initiative to look at, what classes they had and what providers they had on their books to see, like what was going on, because there was a huge amount of controversy about some of the types of classes that were approved, and then also some of the, some of the classes that were not being approved. And so I don't have any, any deep connections in those processes myself. But what I thought was very interesting was that some years ago, they did say that they were going to stop approving certain types of classes, and which was a big shift away, because at one time, they were willing to approve all kinds of classes that had, let's just say, questionable provenance, and they have over the last few years stopped approving or stopped renewing classes that did not meet the updated standards that they had set. But there are some classes that were renewed that, within the last year or so, that are not going to stop being renewed until the initial approval period is over with. And, I think that that's probably an intelligent choice, because in a way, by renewing those classes and saying, okay, it's renewed through 2020 or 2021, I think they have to make good on that commitment. And so, I've been a big proponent for improving the standards by which classes are evaluated prior to approval, whether it's by the NCB TMB or really by any other organizations. And the big thing about the recent announcement by NCB TMB was that they were no longer going to approve massage classes that purported to teach energy work that did not involve touch. And so if it was something, related to like, just distance, like here's the person you're trying to help and here's your hand, whether it's, 6 inches or 6 miles or 6,000 or whatever, they're like, no, that's not massage. There needs to be physical touch. And so, I'm glad I'm not the person that has to parse that out, because I know that there's going to be folks that are going to try to game that system a little bit, by saying, okay, like here's the hand, but my other hand is going to touch them too. I have a feeling that there's going to be a little bit of that going on, and definitely some some controversy. But I think it's a big step in the right direction, because ultimately, as massage therapists, we're known for touch. If we're not doing touch-based therapies, we're not doing massage. And so they're about therapeutic massage and body work, and that kind of implies that your physical contact is involved. So I'm a big supporter of that. I think that it kind of follows on the coat heels also. A couple years ago, the state of Georgia, their massage board there announced that they were going to stop recognizing a number of different modalities that were more energy based, that they were going to stop allowing people to use those for continuing education requirements. And so I think we're going to continue to see movement in that overall direction. It doesn't mean that people couldn't still take classes in these various modalities and incorporate them somehow into the way that they practice. But if we're going to represent ourselves as manual therapists, and in which touch is required, and if we want to be taken seriously by other types of therapists or healthcare providers or fitness providers or whatever, all these other professions, they're moving forward with having a better grasp of the underlying science and mechanisms by which these things work and by which different types of therapy work. We need to step up our game and keep up with that. I've heard too many people that are hopelessly out of date say, oh, the science hasn't caught up with me yet. No, I'm sorry, but the only people that say that are people that have no idea what the science is currently saying, and they are hopelessly behind the times. So, I'm trying to, I'm trying to stay reasonably abreast of science and have some idea of what's coming up down the road. But when it comes right down to it, every time I go to a medical conference, every time I go to a research conference, there's always things just like blow my mind, because of the implications for what might become possible with what I do in my areas of practice. And I think that we're gonna see a lot of changes in the way that people respond to our therapies, depending on things like the fact that they're looking at treating burns now by basically being able to spray on cells that convert to skin and allow people to heal with much less damage and in many cases much less scar tissue. Like, holy cow. I mean, that could dramatically change, the application of how we can work with people with burns, how soon after a burn we could work with them. I'm excited, at the same time, it's like, this isn't getting any less gray. So, I need to keep paying attention. I can't just sit back on my laurels and go, oh, well, I know enough.
Well, yeah, Trent. Yeah. So, Jason, it was really great talking with you, and much like many of the other educators, people that I've spoken with, we could probably do this repeatedly. We could take just the NCB-TMB and do an entire podcast on that. We could do another just on pain science. We could do another on cultural appropriation or different approaches to body work. If you're open to it, I'd love to.
We didn't even get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole idea of cultural appropriation in bodywear, that's a topic you and I had briefly discussed online, and I'd love to get into that too, because Who doesn't learn Swedish?
Yeah. Let's just set it up. If you're open to it, let's just set up a time. And then for where we go from here, Trent, are we having people call in? Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much, Jason, for contacting me, getting back to me to put this together. We'll do this again soon, and if you'd like to do one specifically about cultural appropriation, I think that would be a jumping off point to lots. So let's go ahead and do that. And then one last time, can you tell them where they can contact you?
Sure. As my name is Jason Erickson, you can find me at healtharts.com, healthartes.com. There's a contact link there. Otherwise, you can find me online at Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Health Arts Continuing Education for Transformation, and you can also just look me up by my name, Jason Erickson, and I'm easy to find. The other thing is that if you would like to see me in person for either for therapy or for one-on-one consultation too, you can also book sessions with me at Egan Massage Center in Egan, Minnesota, and just go to eganmassage.com, and you can either give us a call or schedule online for that.
Thank you so much, Jason, for coming on, and we'll go ahead and talk to you again soon.